Hello. Does this work? Hi, hello, right. So when I started at my school, Key Stage 3 vocabulary was, ignore the fact that we did the normal conquest for 2 terms as well, it was memorising words basically so we could give them a quiz that turned out to be a bit like a spelling test. And because of collecting data, they all had different amounts of words in them each term as well, so it was impossible to see how they were doing comparatively unless you'd committed to memory how many there were on each term. So it was a bit of a problem, really. There were also some teachers who allowed them one spelling mistake, some who were really rigid and wanted everything to be spelled right. And it really disadvantaged our dyslexic kids who just freaked out about the fact that they couldn't spell it, even if they knew its meaning. So we decided to try and change things up a little bit, and I just went for bribery straight away. So give them the key stage, give them the sheet at the beginning, and tell them if they use everything in their work, because it's not just the test then at the end of the term, but using it every single time you teach them. What can you use this lesson? What can you stick in? Just get them to highlight it. Once they've done all of them, I'll give them a reward point, really easy. They were quite big fans of getting that. So you can see some examples there of how they've used it. But the thing is, you have to remember to remind them every lesson, which keyword are you going to use today? Because otherwise they forget that they've got the sheet in their book. So you do have to remember yourself as well, because I slipped up on that a couple of times. But they really liked it. It's really easy to see them doing that. Further challenge, so I decided to try and make it even better. And I was offering double reward points if they could use them all in more than one lesson. No, not more than once, because they'll just repeat it in the same lesson, but over more than one lesson. And I also tried to introduce some more historical terms, so as a consequence of this led to, just to get them comfortable with that style of writing that we would then have in the assessments as well. This worked really well, and when I was at West London Free School Conference the other day, I heard Ruth Everett saying that you've got to use a word 10 times before a student will start using it with confidence. So it's just trying to get them in all the time there. So I was really pleased with how well they were doing this. They started sounding like historians when they were writing. This is an example from my Year 7 class. Then for the actual quiz itself, 10 questions each term, easy to record then how they're doing data-wise. And I thought, naively, that if I just said, use them in a sentence, show that you're using them in a sentence like you are in your book, it'll be fine. And that was a complete disaster, because you either had them not using the word itself, but just writing out the definition, or it was so vague it was impossible to mark. And it would take a really, really long time to even peer mark it. So that was a big mistake, so don't try doing that. Instead, I've tried doing things that have to show they understand the word a bit more. So rather than use the word tyrant in a sentence, instead say, can we call Henry VIII a tyrant? And then their answer should show whether or not they understand what that word means. So it's, again, just making it really relevant to them throughout their work and not just a spelling test. And I do let them off if they spelled it wrong. I also have been trying horribly told histories. So a bit like horrible histories, only all the information is wrong. And I give reward points for the one that can identify the most wrong things in that history. They quite like it when it looks like a website as well. So some of them would be able to identify the factual mistakes. Some would be able to identify what keyword could have been used better. There's all sorts of ways you can adapt this, but they're a big fan of feeling like they're achieving more than a fictional website. Finally, I've been trying to put in more literature and sources as well, not being afraid of quite difficult sources. So this one is the writing that was incorporated into a painting of Henry VIII, which has since gone because it burnt down. But this is the writing, and it was in Latin, and I give it to them, and I say, right, this was Latin, and this was on a painting, so this is going to be a bit challenging, but we're going to get there. And you start by highlighting the words they don't know, try reading it again, ignoring those words, see if they can get any meaning out of it. Then we talk about what those keywords mean once I've shown them what they are, and then we start evaluating it as a source. But they just feel really proud of themselves for learning some new words within that as well. So, so this student, for example, highlighted didn't know the meaning or didn't get the context, because take the palm was one that they didn't really know about in that context. That worked really well. And then there were the questions underneath to show their understanding of the source overall. And my final thing is a bit of a book nook that I've got going on in my classroom. I have loads of history books in my classroom, as I'm sure you all do as well. And kids really love reading them as plenaries, or if they finished all their work, it can be a little reward. But also some of them are a bit intimidated by books as a whole. So what I do is I might take an extract, and I'm using historical fiction as well as historical factual books, but I might take an extract, either a very short extract or even a couple of pages photocopied, and they can have all these different ideas that they can do with them, like what is in that book that we've not covered and why might we not have covered it? What's the most important bit? Can you sum up it in a cartoon? Can you show what you've done in a cartoon? Can you pick out the key bits? Anything like that. You can also do it so you've got the reading and then you've got tasks down the side so they can write on the paper by it. Also, I link to the school library to try and get them in their reading as well. So all those things overall mean that all my Year 7s now know what the word tyrant means, even if they don't know anything else.